Starting my time now. Resolved. The United States federal government should substantially reduce military assets stationed in Eastern Europe. Plan. The United States federal government should pull back all battle tanks from Eastern Europe. Our observation on this plan text is that most of the battle tanks and just in general their military assets are right now like focused on Ukraine. So a lot of this case is going to pertain to that. Okay. DA1, proxy wars. 1. Cold War escalation is on the rise. 2. The war powers keep things on the down low for political capital reasons. Basically, proxy wars are escalated in the status quo when we don't want to talk about geopolitics on CNN or in the Russian media, because ultimately the silencing of actually these effects will come out in our impacts of a lot of dehumanization and overlooking and the terror that war powers cause on the people of this world. 3. The increase of proxy wars is occurring with Russian aggression and Western expansionism. Okay. 4. Syria is a perfect example. Look to the fact of I'll have a whole argument on this, but just look to the fact of how the U.S. and Russia are engaging with Syria, and ultimately we overlook the displacement of millions of people and the fact that millions of children are not getting any education, and there's so many detriments to this, and it's just like a war power game. 5. Human rights abuses are on the rise with this mindset and this fragmented way to approach geopolitics and escalation. 6. The refugee crisis is one of the biggest existential risks to humanity. So solvency. Removing battle tanks solves unique parts of proxy wars. 1. Russia doesn't claim aggression. They use subvert tactics of not guerrilla warfare, but rather they don't actually the weaponry and the infantry basically are not actually using older Russian weaponry because they don't want to be identified with the Russian troops. They're doing a lot of different tactics to be seen as a separate power. Yes.
Okay, so Russia just took political control of the two main separatists, the DNR and the LNR. How is your link factually true?
What do you mean?
Like you say they use subvert tactics, but Russia has taken political control of these separatists. So how is your link even true?
Well, they do, but they also do things like that. You can put that in our argument too, but just specific to proxy wars, it's just the fact that they're using tactics that make it so that a lot of them they won't be seen or identified as the Russian government. So you can flow that on our side later on. It doesn't really matter. So basically, tanks are extremely destabilizing too. The West, the West pulls back. The West pullback allows for this ego war between war powers to not uphold this red line scenario. Basically, Obama's oh, we can't let Russia pass this red line, and Russia's oh, we can't let the U.S. pass this red line. It creates this whole devaluing to life for all of the people in Eastern Europe, and it continues the aggression and the tactics we use to basically dehumanize and overlook the others of this world that aren't under the legal conscience of America. So basically, you're going to see, it undermines any democratic ideals or really the functionality of what the West should really function on. 3. The decrease in proxy conflict in Eastern Europe and Ukraine, it decreases proxy conflict because it's actually basically when we pull out tanks, we're going to see that this is a mutual effect. I'm going to give you a lot more analysis on why Russia said they'll basically kind of not follow the U.S. in it, but they'll be more collaborative and more approaching to diplomatic ties and to actual peace talks, you could call them, I guess. But okay, so 4. Allow for further talks on Syria. You're going to see that allow for further talks on Syria. 5. Tanks cause micro war arenas. Russians uniquely use older ex-Russian weaponry to avoid association. I already said that. 6. Ukraine has tank missile defense system, so they already have this solvency. 7. U.S. undermines Ukraine's unique solvency to the problem with tanks because Russians basically roll in tanks. They take over these little towns and literally rape and ruin these places, ruin the places in Ukraine because of how they're approaching warfare in this framework. So basically, we're going to see decrease of this war power conflict because we can see that it doesn't push forward. The West doesn't push forward to pull another reaction from Russia, and we're going to see that we have the possibility for increase in diplomacy. Ultimately, 8. It helps the Syrian conflict because increases our way to effectively solve or approach displacement in the status quo because because basically where's the Russia part? It doesn't. I'll get onto it later. But they're basically like we're gonna see that there's gonna be a lot better relations between Russia and the U.S., especially with Syria. Like just recently, Russia had analysis on how. Yeah, it's all in the next year, so I'll get onto it. So impacts, we're going to have decrease, problems with displacement and dehumanization, and also we're going to decrease the overall proxy wars, which is, key. So, second advantage, uniqueness, one, military, for infrastructure, one, military operations lack regard to the regional location and the structure and infrastructure of the where they're fighting. Two, dangerous warfare hurts infrastructure like streets, roadways, water systems. Three, war is economically detrimental. Four, structural problems makes rebuilding and post-war rebuild extremely difficult. Solvency, decreased tank warfare. Russia has responded with escalation. They don't push forward just like the United States does. Ultimately, the military approach shifts away from this destabilizing, we're gonna blow your shit up approach, and basically we don't even have solvency within this region. But we're gonna see that the Ukraine is getting to the point where they can take care of themselves in certain ways, but we still have a placement within the region. We just aren't using tanks. Basically, impact. We're going to see better infrastructure and quality of life for the people, and also when things persist, the rebuild will be easier. The last one, what is this one called? Oh, Syria. Tanks called micro. Oh wait. Okay. Geneva peace talks. One, U.S. versus Russia U.S. and Russia were gonna meet. Two, Russia said they were willing to step down in Syria and actually look to peace talks, but the U.S. has taken. Okay. Three, U.S. and Russia are fleeing the Syrian or increasing the Syrian conflict. Four, death and displacement and dehumanization are in the status quo solvency, but backing down. Now we show that we are willing to de-escalate and overall so actually have some solvency on a geopolitical scale. Impacts is increased cooperation in Geneva, and so you're going to have even more impacts when it comes to displacement and Syrian conflict, which is really key because there's and European stability because of displacement really hurts Europe and all places around it.
It's going to be case. Case and then 2 years.
In that order?
Yep.
What order are you going to go in first case?
Case is going to be first, just in order of case.
Okay.
Reading some responses, basically.
We can start time now. Overview: the entire case is predestined upon the fact that they're going to be causing less war, meaning that if we prove that more war is going to be occurring in their world, in the scenario where we pull out, they're going to be losing. Let's jump right onto case. One, they say proxy wars are going to be occurring. One, Russia's the one who militarized first. We responded to Russia, which is why, the tanks are something which, tanks are stabilizing the region, not destabilizing the region. They say that tanks are a representation of, this red line which is going to be occurring in their world. One, that's not actually true, because the tanks are there to actually stabilize the region. There's a border where Russia cannot cross into the Baltic states, cannot go into Ukraine, cannot go into Hungary. Something that if we take these tanks out, we're taking this representation of stabilization away from Eastern Europe. We'll take all questions at the end. Meaning that the whole region is going to be completely destabilized. I'm going to be getting onto uniqueness specifically in my disadvantage, which specifically shows how Russia's remilitarizing, meaning that if we were to pull out now, then what we're going to be doing is we're only going to be increasing the aggression because Russia's the one who militarized first. That's a concept we all have to understand. Russia went to Ukraine first. Russia caused all the damage in Ukraine first. So when they talk about all these wars, this proxy war occurring in that region, the only reason why that proxy war is occurring is not because US sent tanks in the first place, but it's predestined on the fact that Russia actually militarized first. The second argument is that they're never going to collaborate because sanctions are still going to be upon them in their world. Meaning that their whole link story about how Russia's going to pull out of Syria, how Russia's going to help stabilize the region, how there's not going to be any more proxy wars is completely false because we're still going to have sanctions on them in their world because all they're doing in their planets is taking out these tanks. Meaning that NATO, EU, and US who are already imposing sanctions on Russia, which prevent us from buying oil on them, they're still going to be angry. They're still they're still not going to negotiate with us, meaning that this is link defense on all of their links, meaning that they're never going to be able to they're never going to be able to get the impacts they want to, because one, we internal link turn them, and two, we have pretty good link defense. Let's go on to some line by line. On infrastructure, we can internal link turn them again, because what they're going to be doing is that Russia's going to militarize even more. Russia's going to go back into Ukraine and destroy more buildings. So their own infrastructure is going to be 4 times worse. The Baltic states, Poland, and Ukraine all have a really low industrial complex in terms of the military. DA1 is Russian aggression. Unique is subpoint 1. Russia is remilitarizing in the status quo. According to statecraft.org, Russia has been remilitarizing in Crimea. Subpoint 2. Russia has increased its military budget to $81 billion this year. Subpoint 3. Russia has taken control of the political control of the separatist force and in Donetsk and Donetsk and Luhansk. According to Newsweek. Unique is 2. U.S. sends heavy military equipment, including tanks and other weapons, to Eastern Europe. They sent 250 armed vehicles. This is according to CBS News. Uniqueness 3. Ukraine does not have a strong weapons production industry. Uniqueness 4. Russia is looking to strike against the Baltic states. This is according to Newsweek. Link the plan pass. Internal link 1. Plan takes weapons away from the Ukrainian army. Internal link 2. Russia will feel empowered to invade more areas in Ukraine, Baltic states, and Poland. Internal link 3. Without weapons, Ukraine will lose. Internal link 4. Fighting causes loss of life. Around 8,000 deaths have occurred in the Ukraine conflict. This is according to UN nations. If we pull out now, this number will only increase. Internal link 4. Russia will invade the Baltics. Internal link 5. This is going to be killing the LNG energy sector. This is probably really important because Poland and Lithuania have a huge LNG sector. If Russia goes out and invades, if we pull out, Russia's going to go out and invade that, meaning that that's going to be really bad for these countries because their econ is going to decrease. I'll take your questions at that. Oh yeah, it's a clarification question.
So you're saying Russia is going to be attempting to invade towards Poland?
Yes.
Even.
It's in Eastern Europe.
Okay.
Okay. Internal link 7. LNG is key to Europe's energy. Impacts 1. This is quality of life because we're going to be decreasing. They're going to be decreasing the quality of life for these people in the area. 2. Loss of life is going to be increasing because Russia's only going to be remilitarizing in their world. 3. Environment. LNG is far more better than oil. If the LNG sector is going to be
Europe's power grid is based on
Europe's
LNG.
power grid is based on LNG. Europe is going to lose its power grid because Russia is not going to want to cooperate with the EU because EU is currently sanctioning them. This is probably really bad. Second DA. DA2 is soft power. U.S. hedges on the brink right now, especially with U.S. hedges on the brink right now. South America hates us. Middle East hates us. South America specifically hates us because U.S. and Brazil haven't had effective communications in the Petrobras thing, which is going on in Brazil as well. The second thing is that Middle East hates us, especially because we're allied with Palestine and Saudi, two of the most oppressive states.
Israel.
Yeah, sorry. Israel and Saudi, 2 most oppressive states in the Middle East. Probably really bad. Also, U.S. and EU relations are key for trade agreements, specifically Poland and Hungary, 10 other Eastern European countries are in the EU, and pretty much what's happening is TTIP, which is a trade agreement which U.S. and the EU want to pass together to help the EU and to help U.S. aren't going to be passing if a U.S. hedge is going to be decreasing, and for relations between U.S. and EU are going to be decreasing. Yeah.
Give me an internal link why this decrease in hedge for the U.S. doesn't allow TTIP to pass.
Because Poland and Hungary and 10 other European Union countries will see destabilization. They're not going to like the U.S. for leaving there, meaning that they're going to lobby against it. And there's 10 countries in the EU which are going to lobby against this. Link the plan passes internal link 1. Internal link 1, European relations are going to be decreasing, meaning that TTIP will never pass, meaning that Greece, Ireland, and other huge countries who are facing huge debt, the PIGS countries, will never be able to solve for these PIGS countries. These PIGS countries are going to be defaulting their debt because they're going to be forced to take austerity measures because their economy is never going to be able to increase because this TTIP bill will never be able to pass, meaning that because these countries have high debt right now, and the other countries can't bail them out, then these countries are going to be forced to take austerity measures, which means that they're going to be cutting funding to healthcare, they're going to be cutting funding to education, and austerity is just going to make their economy 10 times worse, and at the point where their economy is going to be 10 times worse, they're going to be forced to default on their debt, and when they default on their debt, and leave the EU, then what's going to happen is the euro is going to crash because other countries such as the other PIGS countries such as Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Spain, who are all facing really, really high debt in the EU, will also be tempted to default on their debt because we see that Greece has already defaulted on its debt in the first place, which pretty much means that the euro is going to crash, impacts world econ crash because the EU is the biggest economic trade center in the world.
Okay. Order is gonna be neg case, then app case, and one new off.
Where? At the bottom?
Actually, new off is gonna come after I cover neg case.
You're going off on and then.
What? Sorry. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna go off case, then one new on, and then go over case if I have time.
So it's off case, then a new off?
Yeah.
Okay.
New on. Because
new on.
it's it'll probably only, it's pretty short. It'll
Okay,
only
so it's a
probably
new
take-
advantage. Okay.
Okay. So okay. Everyone ready? Okay. Starting time now, pretty much just go over all their link schemes. All their link schemes, pretty much you can see they have like 0% probability, like 0.000% probability. First off, on the Ukraine, we're waiting for a vote of the Ukraine before the EU is going to act. First off, you're going to look at the time frame is way off. And second off, you're going to look at we're just taking ground tanks. We're literally not. NATO is still going to be there. They completely reject that there's still going to be drone capabilities there. Russia's still not going to just go and pounce on EU. If they were going to go into Ukraine, we can see this would affect things like nuclear war and things like that. All like terrible impacts that they talk about. There's pretty much like no chance that Russia is actually going to go into the Ukraine. You're going to look at a tiny probability for this. And the point is that even if they were, U.S. tanks aren't going to be the things that are stopping it. We provide unique advantages to U.S. tanks about how they're bad for infrastructure and things like that. But the point is that here, that the U.S. that we all already have NATO capabilities as well as other things that are going to prevent this. So look at that. Their NATO pretty much solves their entire first advantage. And then going on to their second advantage, you're going to look at time frame on this. The TTIP is going to pass within like the next few months. So we're going to we're assuming like topical debate, which means that like yes, the plan will be implemented as soon as possible. But these tanks, so pretty much the link scheme they're trying to convince you is that like we remove a tiny part of our military, Russia starts like advancing slowly to get EU. By the time that TTIP's passed, it's not like Russia's going to have conquered all of Europe. Like it's not going to happen that easily. So it's not like we're going to remove our tanks one day and then Russia's going to start a nuclear war the next. Like literally look at their time frame on this. TTIP is going to pass, and since like literally, I don't know why they did this honestly, but like their entire link scheme is based on TTIP. You're going to look at this, isn't going to happen. US-EU relations are going to be fine. We're going to pass it. They're going to be incredibly reliant on us still. Either way, so looking at the point, so we're going to go with their link scheme, say it does happen, which first off, it's not going to. Russia isn't going to invade Poland. They don't have a strong enough military. They know that. So so say Russia does invade Poland, right? EU isn't going to be like, oh, let's turn away from our strongest military partner, the US, the biggest military in the world. There's no probability of that happening. EU stays linked with the US for our military capabilities. Just because we remove these tanks doesn't mean that they're going to be like, oh, we should just ditch the biggest military, because EU doesn't have a very strong military. They need to have strong military allies, and we're their biggest military allies, so that's not going to happen. Yeah.
What other defensive mechanisms are there which are in place to protect Ukraine? And
drones. That's like the biggest thing. Drones pretty much solve all their advantages way better than tanks. Even have way less imperialistic effects. Okay, so now going on to the one new office. Okay, neoliberalism. Okay, first off, frameworks that methodology we come before good policy making. We need to check our methodology before we make policy. Otherwise, see that any policy we make is going to be entrenched. So let's pretty much look into like the 50s in the Jim Crow South and things like that. When we were trying to make policy making, we saw this racist methodology. So when we tried to solve these things, we still saw this happening through. We see it's going. Second off is that we see that discourse shapes reality, because the things that we talk about in this round go out. Third is that debaters become policy making. So we need to check our methodology again. Look at like people like Ted Cruz that don't. Third is that role of the ballot is that the debate round should be a home, meaning that we should create a complex place of ideas where we can examine ideas together and
have a multiplicative approach to like a knowledge
and have a more multiplicative approach to knowledge, and not just look at it as like the singular subject that we need to approach. We need to make it a more dynamic space, and critiques allow us to do that. Fourth is that pretty much critique comes a priori. You can just flow that under methodology. Okay, first link is that TTIP fails the DA. TTIP equals globalization. So
TTIP is the epitome of neoliberalist approach
yeah.
to like solving any world or global problems.
Okay. And that second is that increased tide fishing industry.
TTIP increases tax fishing industry.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the second is that TTIP increases. So they promote TTIP, which is terrible, and promotes neoliberalism, which creates one thing.
60% of the Thai
Yeah.
fishing industry is like based on.
So pretty much like it increases Thai fishing industry, and the Thai fishing industry is terrible. It creates like dehumanization of the Thai people by the Chinese. It creates mass dehumanization. They're pretty much taking advantage. They're literally slaves. They have no rights. They don't get living wages at all. Third is that neoliberalism continues in devastating. Neoliberalism continues in devaluing human life throughout their approach. If we take this neoliberalist approach, which they are through promoting things like TTIP that dehumanize life, we're going to devalue life. We'll get it at the end of the day. Or is it like? Do you not understand something?
No,
Okay.
I got it.
Fourth is that TTIP brings us closer to extinction. Neoliberalist analysis propagates legal, conscious, and exploitation. So pretty much when we're just going about this and looking at to solve for economic things, we see that this leads us to devaluing human life, such as we see inherently in the Thai fishing industry. We're literally just looking to economics and allowing the Thai people to be dehumanized and through the economy to literally be collapsed in favor of something that we see as a trade deal. We see this allows for the devaluing of human life, which is the root cause of what's going to lead to extinction. Okay, so now going on to the impacts of this. Pretty much the impacts of this is extinction. First off, it's human extinction, and the second impact off of this is pretty much that we're devaluing human life. That's the biggest impact you're seeing off this by pretty much focusing on the economy, and they don't focus on how this economy intrinsically plays into systems of economics and how it affects people's life, such as the Thai fishing industry. They just blindly promote this TTIP. They exploit the other through this as well. So it continues war and undermines and exploits the other. Going on to our alt, reject the neoliberalist approach to valuing the global community. Did you get the alt?
Say it again.
Reject the neoliberalist approach to valuing the global community. So pretty much how you're looking at international relations and the values we should be getting from them are intrinsically neoliberalist.
Yeah.
Okay, our alt solvency pretty much by recognizing the detriments of neoliberalism is a prerequisite to breaking the pattern and making good policy. Recognizing these trade deals are a lot more. They pretty much just put it as this one thing. They're like, oh, TTIP, econ, good. No, we need to look no, TTIP creates dehumanization. That's bad. So we need to actually look behind this. They're pretty much just propagating these ideas and not looking at those multiplicities that have different ideas and just some different systems within this. So first off, recognizing their neoliberal rhetoric and logic and voting against them is going to decrease this. So so that's how alt solvency. And now going on pretty much to our case, just lightly. On proxy wars, pretty much they're saying Russia militarized first, tanks stabilizing, things like that. Russia will not move into Europe. That's pretty much their entire thing. They're saying that we're taking away this red line. The red line is literally the entire international community would exile Russia if they started taking over Europe. That's the red line. I'm sorry. Our few U.S. tanks are not the red line for Russia not taking over Europe. So they say Russia wants. They say Russia militarized first. That's not the point. The point is that currently we're representing the U.S. We need to say what can we do in order to help life in the international community. In order to help this, we're not looking at it oh, Russia versus us. This is creating a really bad mindset of creating these two binaries of our country. We're giving you complex impacts about this hurts quality of life and economic recovery, and we need to be the ones to take a step. Sometimes someone needs to be the bigger person within this relationship, and we need to say that no, the point isn't being right. The point is saving lives, and that's what the U.S. is doing by removing it. Because Russia, just look to our solvency. They have no probability of Russia taking Europe because of NATO, drones, and the U.S. still has a huge military no matter what.
And Russia just strategically would never do that.
Yeah.
They don't want to.
Yeah, second off, pretty much they're just saying they pretty much their entire reputation is just saying. So they say that if we increase war, so they say if we increase war, then we do it. So first off, look to their value of that. Pretty much war, the only thing they're valuing. They're saying that war, the thing. Yeah, neoliberalism continues war throughout these economic processes. First off, so they continue war more through their rhetoric and their approach to debate space. And second off, we just don't. The point is, drones solve, NATO solves, and the U.S. military entirely solves. For all these reasons, I have to vote in the affirmation.
Order is the order is going to be a new op. Then.
God damn it! Do any of you guys have paper?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. I was really hoping it would expand. You guys can share all this paper.
Thank you.
Okay, order is gonna be new op.
Yep.
Then neolib. Then DAs.
Neolib straight down.
You might want to have links first.
Okay.
Start.
No.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So once again, order is new off.
Is it okay?
No,
Stop playing. I just want to know how many sheets.
it's just one sheet. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay. Like, if you want more paper, we.
No,
Okay. New off. Neolib. DAs. Half case in order. MG. The affirmative should not be able to have a new advocacy in the MG. A is the interpretation. The negative should not be able to have. The affirmative should not be able to have a new advocacy in the MG. B is the violation. They have a new advocacy. They specifically have a reject advocacy in the pre-fiat, and then and then they can still stand by their plan in the post-fiat. Here are the standards. The first standard is that of neg flex. They take away our ability to flex because of the fact that they have the first and last word, which means that in a world in which you just allow for MG advocacies, it means that they get the golden turns in the PMR, which means that it puts neg at even more disadvantage, which is an internal link to fairness. Because in a world in which the MG can always just run new arguments, it puts the neg at a disadvantage because the golden turns in the PMR. The second argument is that of time skew. It takes away time because instead of spending more time on existing arguments, we spend time wasting arguments on new arguments, which
1NC silence.
Yeah, and the 1NC is silence because they can simply moot all of our offense into a new argument. Yeah.
From this point on in the debate, who has more time?
The point is that you set the framework, and also you get golden turns, which means any arguments we make, like Ryan could come up here and turn this theory which already proves the neg is at an inherent disadvantage, but new MG arguments makes that even worse. Time skew, the 1NC is silence. They can moot all of our offense, which is an internal link to fairness. Third is ground skew. They take away existing ground because they have to add a new layer, which means we don't get depth on the existing layers. Like literally, they spend 1 minute on our case and then read a neolib K instead, which means that the clash that we get is destroyed. You should value depth over breadth because Parley checks back for breadth because we get a new topic every round. But in the rounds where we get it, we should have a depth of education. This is an internal link to education. This is a voter for fairness and education. Even if they win, though, so on fairness, as a tabula rasa judge, you have to assume that the round is 100% fair before voting. Which means even if you like their post-fiat, or even if you like their on-case positions, you shouldn't be able to vote for it because fairness shapes the way that the round goes. Second is education. Education allows us to shape social change in the real world, which is the reason why you should be preferring our ways to get education, which is just existing arguments in the first constructive speeches. Now, this theory is a priori because it shapes the way how debate would be. Competing interpretations of reasonably leads to a race to the bottom, and also reasonably implies judge intervention. Drop the debater, not the team, because if you drop the argument, if you just drop the neolib, okay, they still have case, which means you should be dropping the debater to set a precedence. No RBIs. RBIs deter good theory, and also you shouldn't be voting for them just because they prove that they're fair. On neolib.
Yeah, you also can't drop because this is a really bad norm to set in debate.
Yeah, also you can't just drop the argument because it's a really bad norm to set in debate. You should be also looking to potential abuse because it shapes the norms which you as a judge have to set when looking at how rounds go. Okay, on neolib. First, you probably link back into your own criticism at the point where you're making arguments that TTIP is inevitable, which means that there's no link, there's no comparison between our use of the TTIP and your use of the TTIP. Second, your own arguments about how TTIP is inevitable makes it so that you entrench capitalist logic because you say we shouldn't do anything about it because obviously the capitalist and the capitalist construct are just going to pop back up, which means that you probably link it back into your own criticism. The third link is that you say the idea that hedge is going to solve back, the idea that the United States should just engulf all of its hedge to solve humanitarian crisis is obviously neoliberalist because it ignores the fact that the United States has had bad foreign policy actions in the status quo, and the idea that we can just wash it away through the use of hegemony and the use of us just putting our foot down is obviously neoliberalist, which means all of the impacts are non-unique. There's only a risk that they bite in more because we have more links to them, and also they're the ones that are running it, which means a performative contradiction on the it should be valued first because the fact that they
Masking.
Yeah, and the fact that they mask and they say that they're solving for it, even though the fact that they link in more is a performative contradiction that you should evaluate first. Because if they're being performatively contradictory, not only are they saying something is bad, but then later on they're going and doing it, yeah?
Do you promote TTIP? Do you promote TTIP? Like, you say it's a good thing?
We say... we say it's necessary. We say it's necessary, but your inevitability claims probably link you back in just as hard. Also, on this arguments about how we say it's a good thing, which means that okay, on your arguments about how we say it's a good thing, you also say it's a good thing because you don't specifically address the fact that it's going to happen. You say it's going to happen in the status quo, which means you just gloss over the fact that capitalism is like putting its foot down in the status quo. Also, capitalism is completely inevitable. One, that the state is inevitable. Two, greed is biological, which means that capitalism is inevitable. All of your impacts are non-unique. You say discourse shapes reality, which is fine, but your idea that hedge is just going to impose a norm also probably bite you into all of the arguments. On the alternative permutation, vote F in order to reject neoliberalism. Or actually no. What? Actually, not going for affirm. What?
Roll the ballot.
Oh yeah,
Best debater.
roll the ballots to vote for the team that does the best debating. This is the only way to reduce judge intervention. Also, no resolvability for making a debate a home. Also, rejection is really bad. It just causes us to see the political, and also there's no reason why rejection would have any solvency. Like the fact of the matter is, people have run capitalism case all the time, which means that there's no specific solvency to your rejection in terms of any other instances. Also, you don't reject because you use hedge, which means all the links prove how you don't actually reject. Yeah?
Reject is not real world.
Also, reject is not real world. It's not something that you can actually do in the real world. Okay, on the case. They make a fundamental concession. They concede that Russia is remilitarizing the status quo, and already they have taken control of the Donetsk and the Luhansk people, which means that there's no arguments as to why all of these things would check back. They say NATO solves back, but no, NATO only does sanctions. They don't specifically do drones. All of their drone activities in the Middle East. It's not in Eastern Europe, and also Russia would feel empowered, obviously. So you can flow through pretty much all of our links on the first disadvantage. Also, they say no probability, but you should evaluate magnitude over probability, because magnitude is irreversible, and also magnitude is a reason why we would do actions, right? It is something that we actually consciously think about, and also they pretty much conceded all of the uniqueness. Uniqueness claims are going to be damning for them. At the point where they just say, drone strikes are going to take over, but they don't give any warrants as to why, like, there's specific drones in the Middle East. Also, the drone strikes thing is probably going to turn all of the infrastructure arguments, because if drones are already this bad, or if drones already exist, and all of these things already exist, then infrastructure is not going to get any worse. There's only a risk that Russia remilitarizes and takes over all these areas. Conceded internal links, vote nay.
Everyone ready?
Have an order.
Just theory, then K, and then DA versus case. The first DA versus case. The second DA doesn't matter anymore. Everyone ready? We can start time now. Theory is pretty much what's going to be happening is that if they bite into one of the stands, you're going to be voting for the negation. Yeah, for the negation. This is really weird because I've never run this theory shell before. But pretty much, let's go over standards. The first standard is that of necklace. The round's already skewed against the negation for the simple reason that they have the first word, they have the last word. If they're able to come up with a new advocacy, they're always going to have golden turns to, one, our theory shell, and two, the advocacy themselves, because any responses which we make in the block which we have, they're going to easily be able to turn because they get the last word, meaning that we get no response time to any of the new advocacies. The second argument is that of ground, right?
And that's a proven abuse already.
And that's already proved what?
That's proven abuse because Ryan could obviously have golden turns.
Yeah, Ryan could obviously have golden turns. Ground is proven abuse in the round, and the one entity has already been silenced. Like, look, they only talked about the one entity for 1 minute. That's also proven abuse in the round, meaning that we're also losing education. So time skewed, ground skewed, Netflix are all happening in this round. But the biggest argument is depth over breadth, right? We can look at this whole debate, and we're seeing that we're not having very much in-depth responses. We're just having breadth responses. We're just talking about a 1 minute theory shell and then 1 minute on the lib and then another minute on the DA. We're not going to be having this in-depth discussion which parliamentary debate is like necessary to have. Parley already checks back for breadth, so breadth is never going to matter because you can just go research. Breadth is never going to matter. Breadth is not going to give us the same in-depth education as depth will give us, meaning that depth is probably the biggest standard which you're going to be voting on. You can pull the trigger on education. Voters, education, they're losing on education because this debate is never going to be full of depth. 2, fairness is also a voter because we're also winning on fairness. They're literally screwing us out of the ground because Ryan can get golden turns in the next speech, meaning that we have no idea what they're going to be collapsing to. There's an infinite amount of things for them to be collapsing to. There's an infinite amount of ground which Ryan can pull up in his next speech, which means that the negation is automatically at a disadvantage. Fairness is also a voting issue. You're going to pull the trigger there on fairness as well. 3 interpretations are for reasonability. We've given enough reasons for that. Just extend it. 4, no RVIs. RVIs deter good theory. Drop the debater because you guys are the people who are going to be setting the norm. The norm setting is really, really important, specifically in this case because like running a new advocacy off the MG is just abusive. Like, that's just a fact. Okay, on the neo-libk. Okay. 1, the role of the ballot is going to be the team who does the best debating. Do not let them come up here and say the role of the ballot should be the team who
Creates a home.
Who creates a home, because the best debating means that it's going to be the easiest to resolve debate and the most. What other sense do you get from that?
There's no way to evaluate home.
And there's no way to evaluate home. They give no way to evaluate home, meaning that you're going to be viewing the team who does the best debating. Now let's look on specific links. They link it to Hedge they link to the neo-libk just as much as we do. One day their whole argument on Hedge probably links them back into the K harder than us, and the argument that TTIP is inevitable just re-entrenches capitalism, meaning that they also link into their own K, meaning that all the impacts which they give are non-unique. Cap is also inevitable because greed is inevitable. It's human biology. We're always going to want to seek profit. Alternative 1, rejection is like the worst way to actually like go out and solve for capitalism. 1, because the state is inevitable. My partner, you can crossify the articulation my partner gives. But 2, there's not really solvency. Just because you reject doesn't mean that you're actually going to have solvency in the post-fiat or the pre-fiat, because there's no guarantee that you're going to be changing in-fair mindsets. And the third argument is that it's not real world because you're not going to be able to, your rejects aren't real world. This is probably like enough solvency to take out on their alternative. They're not going to be solving through their alternative. On DA. Okay. On the DA, like, there's too much conceded arguments for you to be giving the ballot for the affirmative. Multiple reasons. 1, Russia's remilitarizing in the scope, meaning that if we cause these tanks to leave, pretty much what Russia's going to be doing is they're going to be going back in there and taking control of Ukraine. They're going to be causing more infrastructure damage. They're going to be causing all the whole internal link scenario they give. The only response I get is that NATO will solve back, but NATO doesn't have, NATO isn't specifically sending drones, right? NATO doesn't have control of drones. And 2, in the middle, drones are in the Middle East. Tanks are there. Defensive mechanisms are there. Drones aren't just circling around Russia. That's not happening. I urge you to search that up. And the last argument is magnitude over probability, because magnitude is irreversible. You have to be looking at magnitude first, because probable impacts can always go up and down. Econ can always come up and down. We can always rebound from Hedge, but you can never rebound from extinction. Lives are always going to be lost. So that's why I strongly urge negation.
Okay, so I'm going to be going on theory first, and then the critique in order. Yeah, in order. And then I'll just go down, and then I'll give you 3 voters.
You want a new sheet for that?
Yeah. Starting my time now on theory. Basically, what we're going to look at, they talk about how we bite all their standards and how if we bite their standard, the neg wins. But then they go on to talk about how don't drop the debater, not the Yeah, they talk about dropping debater. I think those kind of conflict in my mind. I feel like they're contradicting themselves. So you're gonna go with drop debater because that's the last thing they said in the end of their theory shell, and you're gonna thus mean if we even lose T, we still in the case falls, we still have the case in this round. They drop case in the last speech. Thus, you're gonna see that basically
They don't make T a priority.
They also don't make T a priority at any point in this round. So that's like you actually won't be evaluating this at the same level as you are with the critique because they don't engage with it the same way. But I'm gonna go onto their standards, so I actually engage with their theory. So basically, they talk about how we have the first and last word there. Okay, so I'm pretty sure we both had a 7-minute speech and a 5-minute speech on this. Ultimately, they talk about golden turns all the time. They give you no analysis on how my golden turns are gonna beautifully destruct this debate into the most unfair round of the debate world. They give you no analysis on this. But furthermore, on ground, we give them just as much ground. We are discursively linking into how their discourse, we write framework on methodology before apology, and how discourse shapes reality. They overlook these things because their methods within their approaching how T-tip is inevitable and how T-tip is something that's a good and something that we should aim for in the status quo is something that inhibits our ability to actually have education and fairness in this round because education is actually built on education can really be looked back to our role of the ballot in certain ways because it's when we talk about building a home, education is about being collective and building a community that is stronger and healthier and treating people like you would want to treat your family or want to be treated. And I know it's we're some stupid Ashland hippies talking about this, but basically it is the way we should approach debate. That's why critical arguments exist. It's to push our limits of understanding how methods and assumption.
Sorry, I love you, brother, but I think the analysis on what it means to be a home and what debate means to be a home is completely new.
Okay, in my speech, I think it said an area where we can all interact with our ideas in a way that's respectful and collaborative. But
I'll just stop on it from now.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just talk about role of the ballot again, and if I'm bringing up new arguments, I'll talk about this. Having way too many point of orders if I actually start doing this, but just know that they really come down to the ground, time, and flex, and basically ground is a wash in this debate. You're going to see that ultimately the time responses, we have the same amount of time on this. This is just traces to the fact that they are propagating on the fact that TTIP is a really good thing, that econ is how we should solve global conflict and problems, and flex basically, they actually don't give you any, there was a very there's a huge deficit. The neck box solved, and they have more time than we do, and basically then really getting on their breadth response, they talk about how breadth is key, but basically depth is pointless if it's misfounded on assumptions that are ill for our society and our function as a part of this debate and as a part of this community. And so if neoliberalism, for example, is that.